And the question then is, was there something that happened that triggered radicalization and an actual decision by the brother to engage in the tragic attack we actually saw in Boston? And are there additional things that could have been done in that interim that might have prevented it? Now, what Director Clapper is doing is standard procedure around here. Which is, when an event like this happens, we want to go back and we want to review every step that was taken. We want to leave no stone unturned. We want to see, is there, in fact, additional protocols and procedures that could be put in place that would further improve and enhance our ability to detect a potential attack? And we won't know that until that review is completed. We won't know that until the investigation of the actual crime is fully completed. And that's still ongoing. But what I can say is that based on what I've seen so far, the FBI performed its duties. The Department of Homeland Security did what it was supposed to be doing. But this is hard stuff. And I've said for quite some time that because of the pressure that we put on Al-Qaeda core, because of the pressure that we put on these networks that are well financed and more sophisticated and can engage in and project transnational threats against the United States, one of the dangers that we now face are self-radicalized. Individuals who are already here in the United States in some cases, may not be part of any kind of network. But because of whatever warped, twisted ideas they may have, may decide to carry out an attack. And those are in some ways more difficult to prevent. And so what I've done for months now is to indicate to our entire counterterrorism team. What more can we do on that threat that is looming on the horizon? Are there more things that we can do? Whether it's engaging with communities where there's a potential for self-radicalization of this sort. Is there work that can be done in terms of detection? But all of this has to be done in the context of our laws, due process. And so part of what Director Clapper is doing, then, is going to be to see if we can determine any lessons learned from what happened. Question: Are you getting all the intelligence and information you need from the Russians? And should Americans be worried when they go to big, public events now? President Obama, the Russians have been very cooperative with us since the Boston bombing. Obviously, old habits die hard. There are still suspicions sometimes between our intelligence and law enforcement agencies that date back 10, 20, 30 years. Back to the Cold War. But they're continually improving. I've spoken to President Putin directly. He's committed to working with me to make sure that those who report to us are cooperating fully in not only this investigation, but how do we work on counterterrorism issues generally? In terms of the response of the American people, I think everybody can take a cue from Boston. You don't get a sense that anybody is intimidated when they go to Fenway Park a couple days after the bombing. There are joggers right now, I guarantee you, all throughout Boston and Cambridge and Watertown. And I think one of the things that I've been most proud of in watching the country's response to the terrible tragedy there, is a sense of resilience and toughness. And we're not going to be intimidated. We are going to live our lives. And people, I think, understand that we've got to do everything we can to prevent these kinds of attacks from taking place. But people also understand in the same way they understand after a shooting. In Aurora or Newtown or Virginia Tech, or after the foiled attempts in Times Square or in Detroit. That we're not going to stop living our lives because warped, twisted individuals try to intimidate us. We're going to do what we do, which is go to work, raise our kids, go to ball games, run in marathons. And at the same time, we're going to make sure that everybody is cooperating and is vigilant in doing everything we can. Without being naive, to try to prevent these attacks from happening in the future. Jonathan Carl. Question, Mr. President, you are 100 days into your second term. On the gun bill, you put, it seems, everything into it to try to get it passed. Obviously. It didn't. Congress has ignored your efforts to try to get them to undo these sequester cuts. There's even a bill that you threatened to veto that got 92 Democrats in the House voting yes. So my question to you is, do you still have the juice to get the rest of your agenda through this Congress? President Obama, if you put it that way, Jonathan, maybe I should just pack up and go home. Golly. I think it's a little as Mark Twain said. Rumors of my demise may be a little exaggerated at this point. We understand that we're in a divided government right now. The Republicans control the House of Representatives. In the Senate, this habit of requiring 60 votes for even the most modest piece of legislation has gummed up the works there. And I think it comes as no surprise, not even to the American people. But even members of Congress themselves, that right now things are pretty dysfunctional up on Capitol Hill. Despite that, I'm actually confident that there are a range of things that we're going to be able to get done. I feel confident that the bipartisan work that's been done on immigration reform, will result in a bill that passes the Senate, passes the House, and gets on my desk. And that's going to be a historic achievement. And I've been very complimentary of the efforts of both Republicans and Democrats in those efforts. It is true that the sequester is in place right now. It's damaging our economy. It's hurting our people. And we need to lift it. What's clear is, that the only way we're going to lift it is if we do a bigger deal that meets the test of lowering our deficit and growing our economy at the same time. And that's going to require some compromises on the part of both Democrats and Republicans. I've had some good conversations with Republican senators so far. Those conversations are continuing. I think there's a genuine desire on many. of their parts to move past not only sequester but Washington dysfunction. Whether we can get it done or not, we'll see. But I think the sequester is a good example, or this recent FAA issue is a good example. You will recall that even as recently as my campaign, Republicans were saying, sequester is terrible, this is a disaster, it's going to ruin our military. It's going to be disastrous for the economy, we've got to do something about it. Then, when it was determined that doing something about it might mean that we close some tax loopholes, for the wealthy and the well-connected, suddenly, well, you know what, we'll take the sequester. And the notion was somehow that we had exaggerated the effects of the sequester. Remember, the president is crying wolf. He's Chicken Little. The sequester no problem. And then in rapid succession, suddenly White House tours, this is terrible. How can we let that happen? Meat inspectors, we've got to fix that. And, most recently, what are we going to do about potential delays at airports? So despite the fact that a lot of members of Congress were suggesting that somehow the sequester was a victory for them and this wouldn't hurt the economy. What we now know is what I warned earlier, what Jay stood up here and warned repeatedly, is happening. It slowed our growth. It's resulting in people being thrown out of work. And it's hurting folks all across the country. And the fact that Congress responded to the short-term problem of flight delays by giving us the option of shifting money that's designed to repair and improve airports. Over the long term to fix the short-term problem, well, that's not a solution. And essentially what we've done is we've said, in order to avoid delays this summer, we're going to ensure delays for the next 2 or 3 decades. Question: why'd you go along with it? President Obama, hold on a second. So the alternative, of course, is either to go ahead and impose a whole bunch of delays on passengers now, which also does not fix the problem, or the third, alternative is to actually fix the problem by coming up with a broader, larger deal. But, Jonathan, you seem to suggest that somehow these folks over there have no responsibilities, and that my job is to somehow get them to behave. That's their job. Their elected members of Congress are elected in order to do what's right for their constituencies and for the American people. So if, in fact, they are seriously concerned about passenger convenience and safety, then they shouldn't just be thinking about tomorrow or next week or the week after that. They should be thinking about what's going to happen 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or 15 years from now. The only way to do that is for them to engage with me on coming up with a broader deal. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do, is to continue. To talk to them about, are there ways for us to fix this? Frankly, I don't think that if I were to veto, for example, This FAA bill, that somehow would lead to the broader fix. It just means that there would be pain now. Which they would try to blame on me, as opposed to pain 5 years from now. But either way, the problem is not getting fixed.